Hey, this is Gary and welcome back to the channel. Today I'll be finishing up the pen body I've been working on. I'll be making the clip screw, the pocket clip, and I'll be etching the wrought iron. After retrieving this little section of wrought iron that I put aside for safe storage, I chuck it up in the lathe and start turning the screw. Facing the end of the bar for a reference surface, I zero the indicator on the carriage and start turning down the diameter here. This ring will locate the screw inside the top of the cap so that they are always aligned. After checking the fit between the locating ring and the countersink in the cap, I start turning down the diameter here. That will be the outside diameter for the 1032 threads. Switching out my turning tool for my grooving tool, I touch off the locating ring before turning the thread relief groove. This will make a cleaner transition for the threads. Using a die supported by the tailstock, I cut the 1032 threads. I really do need to get new dies and a better way of holding dies. One more test fit makes sure that everything fits together. It will be really annoying to have to re-chuck this back in the lathe after cutting it off. Using the grooving tool again, I cut off the screw from the rest of the wrought iron. Remember when I said it would be really annoying to have to re-chuck this in the lathe if I forgot to machine anything? I wanted a relief groove cut here to make sure that the screw will fit completely flush with the cap, which obviously I forgot to do. Using a piece of bronze, I bump the screw concentric and make a very light skim pass on the underside of the screw. Now that the screw is actually finished in the lathe, there is just one last feature to machine, which is the slot for the screwdriver. Screw slots are really fun to make. It's a straightforward process that is easy to set up and execute. I get to use a slitting saw as well, which is really fun to use. To set the height of the blade, I simply line it up with the nub left over from parting off the screw on the lathe. Then turn my mill down to a low gear and slowly advance the blade until it contacts the face of the screw. Then I move the saw blade to the starting position and cut the slot to the full depth. This blade is 35 thousandths of an inch thick, which means it's too narrow for the screwdriver to fit in. To fix this, I simply move the blade up and down by 5 thousandths of an inch and make 2 passes to widen the slot. Now the screwdriver fits perfectly. Taking a closer look at the slot, I'm really happy with how it turned out. With the machining of the screw complete, I will now turn my attention to making the pocket clip. I'm going to use 410 stainless steel for the pocket clip. It's the same steel that I use for the liners in my folding knives, and I have this section of scrap that should have the perfect space for the pocket clip. I decided to use the golden ratio to determine the length of the clip. With the cap being 2 1/4 inches long divided by the golden ratio means that I want the clip to be about 1.39 inches long. I have plenty of material there for the pocket clip, so I shouldn't have to order new materials unless I make any mistakes. To hold this in the mill, I take a section of angle iron and mount it to the vise. Then using a dial indicator, I sweep back and forth, adjusting the position until it is parallel enough for this hole in the clip that the screw will go through. I apply some blue dicum and scribe a line perpendicular to the edge and tangent to an existing hole in the steel. Using an edge scribe to make a rough center line, I then mark out where I should drill the hole. This will give me the maximum amount of material to make the pocket clip from. To position the mill over the mark, I use a wobbler. This is a needle that once pushed concentric with the spindle can be used to point out where the mill should be located. I like making a small touch mark just to make sure that the position is as accurate as possible. Starting the hole with a center drill, I then widen the hole with a 7/32 drill before using a 1/4 inch end mill to finish the hole. I probably could have just used a 1/4 inch drill to make this hole, but I thought that this might give me a better fit, which is probably just extra work for me with very similar results. Using the edge scribe again, I mark out the diameter of the top of the pocket clip. I decide to make this larger than the screw and cap diameter to give them a better transition. I was originally going to have it be the same diameter like this, but I decided to leave it larger and force a transition. In my opinion, I would rather make a hard transition with a feature rather than have a smooth transition that's slightly off. With the etching of the wrought iron later on, I wasn't sure how the fit up would end up looking if I tried to make it exact. Now that the pocket clip is scribed out, I can go over the bandsaw and rough out the clip before going to the belt sander and bringing the profile down to my scribe line. Right now it's a little bit flat to be a pocket clip. Starting out in the leg vise, I make an initial bend using a soft mallet to keep the cleanup work to a minimum. That made kind of an awkward bump that I use the anvil to flatten out. After checking the fit of the pocket clip on the pen, I want to make this bend a little bit tighter. Mounting the clip back in the leg vise, I use a section of scrap wood to try to focus my hammering right on that curve. Once again, I have to straighten out the awkward bump before seeing how it fits up. Now it's overbent and I need to unbend it a little bit. Using a little bit of brute force and ignorance, I unbend the pocket clip. I'm happy with the bend at the top, but now I need to make the swoop at the bottom that will allow it to go over a pocket. After marking out the approximate location I want the bend to be, I start the bend in the leg vise before going over to the horn of my anvil to round out the bend. I'm happy with the shape of the clip, but now there is some fine tuning that needs to happen. Bouncing around the shop to the different tools, I fine-tuned the shape of the pocket clip until it's straightened out. With a combination of hammers, pliers, anvils, and vices, I was able to straighten out the pocket clip. All that hammering really messed up the surface finish of the clip, but a little bit of work on the belt sander and a Scotch-Brite wheel really cleans it up and rounds out the hard edges. Right now, there is a high probability if I catch this pocket clip on a door frame that it will be bent out of shape. To keep this from happening, I'm going to heat treat this pocket clip. 410 stainless can easily be heat treated to a spring-like hardness by getting it hot with a torch and then cooling it down to room temperature with compressed air. I am very happy with how this pocket clip turned out. I was a little concerned that the heat treating would warp the clip out of shape, but that didn't happen and the spring action is really nice. I finished up the clip using a combination of rubberized abrasives and Scotch-Brite wheels. Just look how nice that turned out. I can now turn my attention to the wrought iron pieces. Right now these pieces have a finish from the lathe. There is basically a small groove that spirals around the entire length of the parts. The grain in the wrought iron runs along the length of the pen, and I want to sand away the lathe finish. With the jaws of my vise now softened, I can clamp the cap into the vise and sand the entire outside diameter to a 220 finish. While I could just etch these in the current state, having a hand-sanded finish will give me a cleaner result, and I think it should be worth the extra effort. You can see just how much of a better finish there is from the sanding versus the turned finish. I can now turn my attention to the cartridge keeper and sand the outside of that up to a 220 grit. It actually surprised me how easy it is to sand away the finish from the lathe, which makes me think that this wasn't really necessary, but now I'm committed. And finally, I can sand the head of the screw up to a 220 grit as well. While making this pen, I have been carrying it around just to get a feel for it in my pocket, and something I noticed was that the edge of the screw was very sharp and uncomfortable. I'm going to slightly dome the top of this on the belt grinder by holding it in a cordless drill. While this is a small detail, this dome should soften the edge enough, making it more comfortable to carry. I don't want to etch the entirety of the wrought iron parts. For the cartridge keeper, I only want to etch the outside and leave the Morse taper and the inside unetched. On the cap, I want to etch the entire outside, but not the inside. For the screw, I want to etch the entire top, but leave the underside unetched. To protect those areas, I'm going to use some nail polish to cover them up. This will block the acid from getting to those areas. I am being very generous with the nail polish because I don't want there to be any chance of the acid getting through it. Setting all the parts aside, I let them sit overnight so the nail polish fully cures. The next day, the nail polish is fully cured, but there's nail polish on the parts of the pen that I want to etch. This was done for a purpose, and to clean off the nail polish, I will use some more 220 grit and sandpaper and very carefully sand away the excess nail polish. This might seem like extra work, but applying and removing the nail polish this way will give me a crisp corner on the edges that would be very difficult or impossible to complete any other way. With all the nail polish cleared away, you can see just how crisp that corner is. If you've ever messed with nail polish before, you'll know that it would be nearly impossible to get a crisper edge. After a bunch more sanding and going through a ton of sandpaper, all 3 sections of wrought iron are fully sanded and ready to etch. I'll be using ferric chloride to etch the wrought iron. It's normally used to etch PCB boards, but it's also what most people use to etch their Damascus, or in this case, wrought iron. After a thorough cleaning, I use some stainless steel wire to hold the parts suspended in the ferric chloride so they don't touch the sides. Throughout the etch, I'd periodically check these parts to see if there were any issues and to see if enough material had been eaten away. After about 6 hours in the ferric chloride, I decided that I liked the depth of the etch. After pulling the parts out, I first dunked the parts in baking soda water to start neutralizing the acid. After a quick soak, I take the parts out of the baking soda water and put them onto some aluminum foil and thoroughly wash them down with some Windex. To remove the residue from the etch, I cleaned the parts using some steel wool. Now you can see why I used wrought iron. The wood grain-like finish is almost impossible to make any other way and has a subtle yet elegant look in my opinion. With all the nooks and crannies in the wrought iron, I want to do a nice long soak in some WD-40. This will not only displace any water trapped in the crevices, but should help to keep any rust from forming. I think there will be some continuous maintenance on this wrought iron to remove any rust for a while before it stabilizes. I let the parts soak overnight so I know 100% that they are completely saturated in WD-40. The next day, I wipe off all the excess oil. Now all that needs to be done is to assemble all the parts. This spacer takes up the space here and makes the cartridge stick out the tip of the grip section the correct length. Next goes in the cartridge itself, followed by the spring that I stole off another pen. The grip is screwed in next to hold all those pieces together. I guess you could call it the writing section of the pen, is assembled and finished. Last thing to assemble is the cap section. I place the cap screw into the pocket clip, and then that gets screwed into the top of the cap. I spent some time to line up the slot in the screw perpendicular to the pocket clip itself. Once I am happy with the position, I tighten it down with a screwdriver to finish off this build. Man, this pen turned out so well. It even writes better than just a normal pen. This was a really fun build, and I can't wait to carry this around in my pocket and use it every day. I mean, just look at it. It looks fantastic in my pocket, the wrought iron's beautiful, and it writes amazing. I really couldn't ask for anything else out of this pen. Thank you as always for spending a little bit of time with me, and I look forward to seeing you the next time I'm in the shop.